My name is City Wong, and I was born and raised in Malaysia. Our Chinese family has a rich history with a Malay flavor, but I've always been different from them, even in appearance. Despite that, my parents said I was their favorite daughter, and that was it. My sister Lee was always jealous that my parents treated me with more leniency. Maybe at some points, I was chill while Lee worked hard at her lessons. But it wasn't that I didn't do them, it was just that it was easy for me. I was fine with the study materials, especially since we were studying remotely on the whim of our grandmother. By the way, I've never seen my grandmother in my life, only in pictures and videos. My parents said that they rarely communicate due to my grandmother's busy schedule. She used to be the Minister for Social Services, a strong, iron-willed woman. Even my father was afraid of her son. If my parents went to visit her, they often only took Lee. Did it offend me? At first, I wondered why they didn't take me along, but then my mom and dad got me a cool computer and bought me an awfully expensive IT course in programming. They sucked me in, and I spent most of my time studying. This happened when I was only 6 years old. I called my computer my ponytail because it was always everywhere with me. And that's how the years passed, online. Instead of taking an interest in my folks' lives, I studied programming and went outside only in extreme cases of need. My folks didn't go to the store, everything was bought online. There was nothing for me to do on the street, and eventually I gave up my attempts to go outside. My family would go out once a week or once every 2 weeks for a weekend getaway off the island, and that was enough. But that wasn't the case with Lee. She was always hanging out with her friends, but she wasn't allowed to bring anyone home. We never had guests, not even once. Why not? At first, I thought it was normal, like it was supposed to be like that. It wasn't until later that I realized there was a good reason behind it. More precisely, a great family secret that I found out about in a ridiculous way. I'll tell you about that a little later. So I knew all my relatives by sight from photos, videos, their life stories, and habits. One day, my parents were going to a reception at my grandmother's house. She was getting some sort of super award and was throwing a party with a high society. I found out about it on the internet, and for the first time in my life, I wanted to meet her. Lee and I were fighting at the time. My mom and dad wouldn't tell me anything, when the event was going to take place or who would be there. So I took the easy way out, hacking into my sister's phone. She was telling everyone about the party. Her boyfriend, her friends. It was enough to hack into just one of her chats, and boom. Although I almost immediately regretted doing it, because what I read was shocking. My sister wrote, "No, we're going to be without City again. You know my folks hide her existence from everyone. They've given so much money to keep the press from writing about her. I think they're so ashamed that they're not willing to sacrifice their reputations." The chat ended abruptly, and I think Lee realized that someone else had logged into her account. But it was too late. All this interesting stuff was left in my head. Most of the time, I had to make an effort just to avoid thinking about my parents' shame. Is there any worse news than finding out that your dad and mom don't want to tell anyone about your existence? How would you feel? The day of the reception came. I was left with a babysitter, as always. Lee put on her prettiest dress, and instead of just sitting at the computer, I felt like saying something nasty to her. "Don't get your makeup all over the dance floor." "Well, you don't even know how to put on lipstick, although why would you need it? While we'll be in a rented penthouse, which you've never seen, you'll be here to talk to your programs." "What penthouse?" "Rich palace. Why, you want to see it? Well, Google it, sis. Bye." Do you know what happened next? I waited for the babysitter to get her vitamins for dinner, waited for her to take the sleeping pill I'd slipped her, and drove straight to the palace in my sweatpants and sneakers and a stretchy t-shirt scribbled in IT code. Security wouldn't let me in. "But my parents are here." "What are your parents' names?" "Amin and Dashen Wong." "What? Dashen Wong? Our landlady's son? Did you hear that? That's the most ridiculous thing I could think of. I hate to break it to you, but your machinations have failed. Mr. and Mrs. Wong have already arrived with their daughter." I know, that's my sister. That's it. I've had enough of this concert. I'm gonna throw you out by your neck. Wait, no, I'm their daughter. They only have one daughter, and she's wearing Jimmy Choo shoes and a dress by Vera Wang, their distant relative. Get out of here. I was shocked. How? So really, no one knew I existed? I hid behind the house with my MacBook, quickly hacked into the video surveillance system in the right hallways, and set the alarm in the right wing, where all the guards were gathered. I took advantage of this and ran inside almost unhindered. Amidst the socialites, piles of diamonds, and expensive champagne, my family was enjoying the event, along with my grandmother, whom I was seeing for the first time in my life. I approached her decisively and bowed. Hello, Grandma. I am City Wong, the daughter of your son, who has hidden my existence for 16 years. I don't know what reaction I was expecting, but certainly not the reaction I got from Grandma. Guards! Get that imposter out! And I just automatically told stories from my father's childhood that only she and Dad would know about. My grandmother almost got sick. She immediately took my parents and my sister and I into the other room and made me confess everything. Dad told me that they'd been forced to hide my appearance in the family for one simple reason. We adopted her. What? I was in a state of shock. In all these years, I'd never once questioned our kinship. And now, this. Unacceptable! You know my ideology. Children should be born in wedlock and live with their parents. I have a lot of opposition, but for my son to go against my words, and even behind my back, and to hide it for a whole 16 years. She was a little girl. She was given to us. All the more so. Her story could tarnish your family and ours. What if she's the daughter of drug dealers or murderers? Have you even checked? Everything has to be checked. She's of filthy blood. How do you know? I'm not even going to talk to you. Go back to where you came from. Mom didn't let me say a word. While they were putting me in the car, taking me out to the back entrance of the building, my mother said that her mother-in-law was a willful person. Why were you hiding? Your father could be disinherited. Is this about money? I'm sorry. I'll talk to you at home. My sister shouted that now she understood why I wasn't like her and that I was trash. My mom shooed her away, but the words had already struck right through my heart. I clutched my computer in my hands and drove home alone with the driver. But I didn't linger. Instantly, my grandmother's words rang out. Go back to where you came from. What if I could find my biological parents? I found the largest state archive in the country on the internet. Once there, I hacked the alarms and got inside. Thanks to access to all the cameras, I managed to be undetected, live there, go out when I needed to, buy food, and sleep somewhere in the most abandoned office. My parents couldn't go to the police because the truth about me would immediately come out. I wasn't wrong. It was there that I found a decent amount of information about the family I lived with. My grandmother was a fierce opponent of illegal adoption, and for good reason. 7 out of 10 children were illegally sold in the case of unofficial custody, sold as slaves, or killed. There were few lucky kids like me, and the fact that her son had been illegally adopted could have taken a huge blow to her reputation. She was afraid of losing her place over a child she didn't even know. And then I found something more interesting. For about 5 days, I studied the documentation on my real parents, my birth history, why I'd been dropped off, and how I ended up at my parents' house. And then I did the unthinkable. I pulled myself together and went straight to my grandmother's house after a week of wandering. My father was there. He was heartbroken. At the sight of me, he jumped up and started hugging me and asking for forgiveness. But I didn't even look at him. I went straight to my grandmother and threw a pile of papers on the table. What is this? What kind of junk? Facts and evidence. You said I could be the daughter of murderers or drug addicts. Here's proof that my parents worked in public service, just like you. Moreover, many years ago, when you openly stated your opposition against adoption and a number of media outlets reported without fully disclosing the meaning of what you said, an attack was launched on your block workers. Enemies were found. They set up the car accident. I was saved only by being in a cradle. Right after the accident, my mother asked a family friend to give me to your son because she knew my mother couldn't have any more children. And that's how I ended up in your family. Daddy cried. He didn't even know everything. Grandma froze. She couldn't find the right words. You think children are responsible for their parents' fates? Mine were victims of political pressure. They worked for your ideology and believed in it. How did you find all this? State Archive. You said everything should be subject to verification, so I checked. Silence. For 5 minutes, both my grandmother and my father were mute. Then my dad got down on his knees and asked to leave me alone. He said he loved me like a daughter and that he regretted not telling me about this 16 years ago. No, Grandma didn't accept me right away, but I brought the story to light and the media printed about it. My grandmother was quick to clear up the mess, but now everyone knows who City Wong is. That's me, the best young programmer and illegally adopted child. Tell me guys, did you like my story? Write your opinion about it in the comments below the video. Don't forget to like it, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel.